Welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for April. It's sunny. If we look closer, though, hopefully it's more sunny. If we look even closer at that, almost to an infinite level, we'll start to see maybe a little bit beyond the void and see a little bit more of the sunshine. It's almost like in some kind of fractal kind of situation. But I guess, I don't know what colour to do. I kind of can do all different types of colours. It depends on the type of ink that I'm going to be using on this particular episode. So, in order to talk about fractals beyond the void, and also to talk about board game ink, I have got Yann Hilaire with me.
Nice. Well done. It's the correct pronunciation.
It's the correct pronunciation. Now, Jan's on a glass of wine. He's advised me he's just, I'm on obviously my normal kind of diluting juice, but it's fine. It's all good. We're gonna have.
It's what you say. I cannot vouch for what you say. What is in that glass?
That could be lighter fluid. I mean, let's face it. I've moved on from wine a long time ago. I've moved on past kind of whiskey. I'm now into kind of like drinking various different kind of car mechanical fluids, I guess you could say. Let's go back to the beginning, which, as they say, is a very, very good place to start. In terms of the design kind of thing, I find, and I've said this before, but I find designers kind of fall into two categories. They are either they have an artistic vision, and then they use that artistic vision to help them design a game, or they're very mathematical, and then they use their mathematical brain to help them build the game and then bring in the theme kind of afterwards. So what would you say in respect to yourself? Are you a more artistic person, or are you a more kind of mathematical person, would you say?
Right, so I would say definitely I'm more like the creative type of person, but I work with mathematical person. So that's probably the challenge, is to mix those two like kind of background. The game designer definitely has a very statistical approach, looking very much about number, proportion, probabilities and all those type of things. I'm more like on the creative side of things.
Okay.
And I guess that's probably the challenge, I would say, to work to kind of be able to mix and make those work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you were at school, did you go to kind of university and college, and did you specialize in any particular kind of subject?
Right. I came from a background where I first studied marketing.
Oh, right. Okay.
So nothing at all related. Really.
Well, I guess when you go into Kickstarter, you would have found that quite useful.
Proved to be useful after. Yeah. Then I did kind of like scratched that of my life, and then started again and studied cinema actually.
Wow.
For like 3 years, with a lot of dreams in my head and big projects and all kind of ideas. Didn't go like somewhere very like clear. I had this idea, this vision. Like I wanted to become a music composer for film.
Oh, right,
Actually,
okay.
at the beginning, and I thought that if I cannot find a job as a composer for someone, then I might as well do the film myself, and then I get to compose the music. I get to do that because I can hire myself, right? So that was the original idea of studying cinema.
So
and,
did you? So you're quite a musical. You're quite a musical person, then. Do you play quite a few instruments then?
I play not a few. I just play the piano mostly, and a little bit of guitar. A little bit of guitar.
Just I just throw together the occasional tune on the piano.
I do definitely like. I really love piano. It's the probably the place where, like, if I have a bad day, if I have troubles, if I'm I don't know, my brain needs to like breathe, then that's definitely the place where I go and like relax and spend a couple hours, definitely sometimes in the dark in my living room, and play the piano for hours, just like random tunes, things that comes to mind, and then like evacuate the stress of the day. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have like a particular kind of piano composer, like piece of music? I mean, people talk about obviously Chopin and things like that. Is there anyone that you kind of like?
I do. I'm a big fan of Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
I really love actually I love the most minimalistic pieces that he's made, like Time from Inception, for example. It's one of my favorite of all time. Like, definitely, like, it's just taking something so simple as, well, we always talked about those popular songs that has 4 chords, then you can like hear those same chords like in all the popular songs nowadays, which is true. But this song also, Time from Inception, has definitely only 4 chords as well, but it's just like so beautifully done that you don't need more than that, really. It's amazing, like, what you can do with that, and the most simple instrument like piano and the cello, and then there you are, like, amazing.
Inception is one of my favourite films. I mean, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and I think a lot of people like him for the Batman films, where it was grounded in reality. But I think for me, I've said in the past, The Prestige is a really, really good film. But I really liked Inception. I'm one of the few. I'm maybe one of the few people that goes back and watches Tenet again and again and again, and I still don't fully understand what's going on in that film. But I just love I love in the fact that, in, say, you're talking about composing music, but when you listen to the soundtrack in Tenet, some of the music in Tenet is being composed so it plays backwards and then plays forwards, depending on the kind of the kind of the part of the film. With composition, though, I mean, when you're, it must be really intimidating to say, right, okay, well, Hans Zimmer had access to this cello, this piano, and this triangle, and he managed to create like this piece of music, and then you're just like, is it difficult to kind of keep a motivation to kind of keep kind of composing and kind of keep kind of working away, knowing that there's such big kind of benchmarks kind of out there?
Yeah, well, you have to like downscale a little bit your vision, I suppose. Like, I mean, yeah, I would obviously love to record with an orchestra and a cello, a live musician and stuff. Like, fortunately, we live in a time where like you can do quite a lot with just a MacBook and a few software. The sample now, like the virtual instrument, they're really, really good, and then obviously like you can hear the difference, but this is really, really good quality still. So you can you get there somehow. Like it's a little different, but it gives an impression that you're getting there. At least.
So you went and you studied cinema, and then after that, where did your career kind of take you? What did you end up kind of doing?
So like the idea was right when I finished university, me and my friend, we started working for a few local companies making corporate movies. We had that idea, like a bit naive idea, that we would work with corporate companies and make a little bit of money, and then we could spend that money making our own movies.
Yes,
being creative and all that. And it went a little bit differently in the sense that once we got started to work like with companies, and we did work more and then work a little bit more, and then we just didn't get the time to do like all those creative projects that we dreamed about.
Yeah.
So we ended up like creating a company together where we did like those corporate movie like for the next 6 years or something like that.
Okay.
Which was like a very, very good opportunities. Like we had some really good clients that we got to travel, we got to like discover amazing places in the world, and like it was a great opportunities. But obviously like it became really hard to have the time and energy to spend on like something more creative.
Yeah, did you find that, I mean, working with kind of corporates, where you found that there was kind of like rules that you had to stick to with regards to what you were allowed to create and what you were allowed to kind of make? I know I've dealt with corporates in the past, and when it comes to things like when it comes to design in relation to kind of like marketing and websites and things like that, they're very, very strict on the assets that they want to have, and they're almost very, very strict to say that, well, you can't use this font here, you have to use this here, you have to use this colour here, you're not allowed to use this colour because it's actually our competitor's colour. And I've seen that before, and I've said, oh, this works really, really well with a product, and it's like, no, you cannot use that colour, because if people associate that kind of colour with that other brand, so if they even if they see our product, they're going to automatically go, oh yeah, that's that company. So did you find when you were working the corporates, they had kind of rules then that you had to follow when you were making the kind of the videos and things like that?
So I think we actually got a little bit lucky there, because we signed a very big client quite early when we started the company, and I think we got that client because we wanted to bring something different in the corporate world. So, for example, we started we were filming like those kind of nice gastronomical restaurant and luxury hotels, and we started to do it a bit the same as we would make our own movies, like in a bit of a cinematic way.
Yeah, okay.
Bringing something that, I mean, nowadays you see that everywhere, but like I'm talking back in 2008.
Oh, right, okay.
It was not that often that you would see like some of the shots that we were trying to make with like the random equipment that we would build ourselves, in our house, like with random plastic tube and stuff like that, to make like a traveling glider or something like that.
No.
And I was actually composing the music for those films, and I think that's this approach that was a little bit different than the regular corporate approach that you would find at that time.
Yeah.
That got us that big client because they wanted something a bit more fresh, I suppose, or I don't know, they just liked it, and then we got to sign them as a main client.
Wow.
It was a big chain, and then we got to do a lot of film for them. So I don't think the rule was so strict with them, actually. I think because they wanted to keep that fresh new image of the brand that they were representing.
And I suppose back in 2008, I mean, we're spoiled now for kind of creative tools when it comes to video. I mean, you only need to look at say even like TikTok. and you look at the various, there's so many different filters and effects that you can apply to video in real time. And when you go back to 2008, I mean, it's probably fair to say that really kind of YouTube was still very much kind of in its infancy, and the fact that probably most videos at that time were not being produced in kind of even in a widescreen format, let alone kind of like a high definition format. I think that was round about the time where obviously Blu-rays kind of came out, but we were still a little while away from, I think, 4K and ultra high definition just now. So I guess if it's kind of interesting because I've been showing my son, because he's been listening to music in the car, and I've been trying to educate them as you do, but we ended up listening to Sabotage by the Beastie Boys, and he was like, I says, the video on this is amazing, you've got to see the video on this, it's cracking. And it's the 1970s kind of pastiche where they're pretending to be kind of like, kind of cops and things like that, American cops with the big moustaches and things. But then when I put the video on, I realised it wasn't in widescreen. When YouTube kind of put it on, it was in kind of like the square box format. And then I also showed him, was it Jamiroquai Virtual Insanity? The one where he's kind of like moving around, the room's kind of moving around. And I'm kind of like going, this is amazing. And he's looking at me going, nah, it's not. I'm just like, but this blew my mind when I was younger. So it's just kind of amazing how technology's moved on, that you get people kind of doing some really, really kind of amazing things that even kind of like back in 2008, 2010 would have been considered kind of impossible to do.
That's the thing. Like for me, 2008, it doesn't seem that far from me, like. And yet so much has happened, of course, like videos were completely different. I mean, I stopped the company like in 2014 or something like that.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't stop it, I would go bankrupt anyway, because like everything is becoming like, you can. I mean, we were filming with big cameras and stuff like that. Now we're filming with an iPhone, and it's better quality.
I mean, it's got about 4 different lenses on it. There's a macro lens on this, which is like if I'm taking, there's a macro lens, and I'm and just for the tape, I'd like to point out I'm holding up my mobile phone, but there's a macro lens on this phone. So if I'm taking pictures of kind of like close-up miniatures on a game, the macro lens kicks in and you get these beautiful images. Now go back to even like say 4 or 5 years ago, you didn't have these. No. You're trying to like get a magnifying glass and kind of balance it kind of all up. So once you kind of finish the company or put the company down in like 2014. Did you go back and work for somebody else? I mean, where were you in your board game journey at this time? How far down the road were you in terms of kind of like playing games and then looking at, actually, I'm going to go ahead and design a game?
Right. Well, I did not know anything about board game at that time. Definitely not. So what happened when I finished? The reason why I finished the company is because we started traveling for those corporate clients, and then suddenly like I realized that this is a big world out there and there's so many things to see. So I just realized that I wanted to travel for my own, like go and explore the world. So I stopped the company because I wanted to. I just like book a plane ticket and went to spend 1 year in New Zealand.
Wow.
Arrived there like a couple of days later, bought like one of those very old-fashioned minivan where you have the bed at the back, the comfortable thing. Yeah. And then travel like New Zealand, like both islands, and just like live from nothing really, and like so I ended up spending basically all my savings over like 2 years of traveling. Yeah. Starting with New Zealand and then going to Asia and like. Diving and all kind of things, so not really like thinking about the future at this point, and came back completely broke 2 years later in Europe. but with no regrets though, and
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
I loved it, and I actually like met my wife over that trip, so like even less regrets.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to say
Yeah,
that because this is getting recorded.
yeah, it is, and she will want to listen to it. So
She'll
yeah,
want to
of
listen
course.
at it, and and yeah. So, but is she? She's not. Is she? Is she French as well, or is she from New Zealand herself?
No, so she's Danish, and that's the reason why I am now in Denmark myself.
Oh, right. Okay. Good stuff.
So that's yeah. That you don't come to the northern part of Denmark just randomly. There has to be a good reason for it. It's got to be a girl. It's always a girl.
It's It's always a girl for northern Denmark. I heard that's a number. I heard they have at the immigration desk when you come into Denmark now. They've got like a sign that says, "If you come here on business, join this queue. But if you're coming here to Denmark for a girl, then join this queue." And usually
Yeah,
the queue for that is usually about the same size as the kind of the business one. So how okay? So what I'm hearing is you're very creative. So I'm trying to. When did the crossroads occur when you were sitting down and going, these board games, they're good fun.
yeah.
I might try and make one.
Right. So when I get back from that travel, me and my wife we moved to London, where I kind of like improvised myself web designer. I say improvise because I had no qualification whatsoever. It was one of those cases like fake it till you make it.
Right. Okay.
I remember like arrived there, I had zero money, and then find like a job in telemarketing or something awful like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just wanted to get out of it, and then I started to apply for designer, UX designer as they call it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no experience whatsoever, but pretended I had some, and got a job actually fairly soon in a company in London. And I got to learn a lot of things, to be honest, because like since I didn't know anything, I learned everything there.
Yeah.
I do remember like the day before I started, I do remember like Googling like what does like a web designer exactly do, you know, like what's the job exactly. I had no idea what I was doing, but
Do you still know this company? Do you have any contact with this company or?
I actually do, like yeah, actually I do, and he found out for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if it was a confessional thing. It was like 6 years down the line, and it's like and they're patting you in the back and saying, "Yann, I must say you're one of the best web designers that you have." And it's like, well, you wouldn't think so at the time when I joined, because I knew absolutely nothing. But
Well, I appreciate that there's still some opportunities in the world where you get to like, you know, people don't necessarily need to see like a 5-10 years experience of something before they get you a chance, because I mean at the end of the day, what are the risks for a company to hire someone, you know, if you fit the description.
it's
If you don't, then yeah,
it's the right person sometimes, and it's the right as I said, I think there was one thing I remember recently where I saw on one of these business social media networks where they were saying, I recently applied for a job to and was turned down because I didn't have enough experience in the programming language, and they were asking for, was it 5 years programming experience, and they says but the language itself had only been created 3 years ago. I should know. I created the language basically. So the guy had actually done it. But the other thing is as well is like, if you're gonna ask somebody to do a job, ask a lazy person to do the job, because a lazy person will always find the quickest, easiest way to do a job instead of like the most complicated way. And I think that's how I run my life. But so you're in London. Is this when Little Bits of Cardboard
yeah,
kind
we're
of
getting there.
entering your life?
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. So that same person that I had the first company with, we actually got to meet a weekend together, and then he was the one introducing me to board games. We played a couple of board games for the first time. Like, I had no idea what, like, all the thing that already existed at that time, you know, like I didn't know much about it. But we came to like think like, oh, it would be nice to work together again on something new, and like, you know what is it not possible to make one of those, you know, like, I mean, he was the expert in that. He had a lot of like he played a lot of game already, a lot of knowledge and stuff like that, and I was good at creating graphics, design, things like that. So it seemed like okay, I think it was more like of an excuse to work together again. There was definitely no big project behind. It was a fun project, just like, you know, like some excuse to get together and talk and, you know, spend some time together. And the thing is, like, obviously, like we got to like you imagine that, oh, it's just a matter of a couple months, right? It doesn't take that much time to do a board game. It can't be that hard, right? It's just paper. It's
famous last words.
Yeah, exactly. It took a bit more time than that. Few iteration of the game. Though the first game was called Exodus, Rise of the Corruption, and definitely like we had a few versions of that one. But it was all in good fun, honestly. Like, we would meet. So he was living in Belgium, I was living in London, and we would meet in random places in Europe, like, and just like booking an Airbnb for the weekend and testing the game, and like, okay, going back on the Monday, starting all over again, and like, it was just fun. And then, you know, the project, you get more and more invested into it, and then obviously at the end, like a year and a half later, you look back and say, oh, okay, it took a bit more time than I expected. And but, you know, now we're there, so how about we try to make something out of that game, you know, like, and obviously, like, you also like go through Kickstarter and you see those campaigns, and like, oh, okay, well, seems like there's a market for it, you know, people seem to enjoy those things. And essentially that's what we did. But to Kickstarter.
Yeah, I know, but it looks, I'm not being funny, right? But it looks extremely kind of above and beyond what I would expect a kind of a first project to be. Like, looking at Exodus, there seems to be a lot of kind of moving parts to it as a game. Because normally when I speak to first time designers, and I hate to be, I'm almost like a Sith, it's like it's all binary, but they either seem to be, first time designers to me either come out with a very, very simple kind of almost like kind of simple to play, mechanically simple, not many components kind of game, or they go huge and it's got like, you know, tons of minis, lots of mechanics and lots of components. Looking at Exodus, it looks like you kind of decided to go, well, I'll roll all the dice and see kind of what happens. Was it bigger?
Yeah,
was it even bigger than that? Was it a bigger game when you first designed it?
Oh yeah, there was everything and nothing in there before. Like, it was a lot of ambition, a lot of desire. Like, oh, you want to put everything you know about it, and then, but I think as the project progressed, and we saw ourselves like trying to put it on the market, and by market I mean Kickstarter.
Yeah.
We tried to make it a bit more like realistic. So that's when we started to kind of like streamline everything, downsize everything. We didn't go for like a lot of plastics and things like that. We really tried to, and we tried to also like, first game, nobody knows us, obviously. Like, we know one. We're like two people just like having fun. So we didn't want a game that was too expensive also to produce. There would be, we can't come to Kickstarter with a game that costs like $200 and something like that, you know, with just a lot of plastic. People would not trust us, they don't know us. So yeah, it definitely had that step where like we had to like kill the darlings, as they say. Remove all the things that's we love them, and they could be a good expansion eventually, later. But for now, we needed to keep the thing as simple as possible, as streamlined as possible, and that's what we try to do. To some extent, it worked. I think we could have streamlined a little bit more, but still, it's somehow we made it. We made it.
Well, I mean, the first campaign, it was, I think your target was 20,000, and you did 170. Which for a first, I mean, normally for a first Kickstarter campaign, and in my experience, it's a kind of like they'll do a 20,000 campaign, will do 30,000 or 40 or 50,000 if it's doing really, really, really well. But to do 100,
that's what we expected.
But to do 170,000, were you kind of like, oh my goodness, they better like this. They better like this game, otherwise we're in trouble.
We definitely did not expect that at all.
Yeah.
And I remember that we were still living in different places at that time, even during the launch of the campaign. I was in Norway, and my friend was still in Belgium. And then he came to my place, and I was living in Oslo. And then we got really surprised by the first day, actually. And we were not ready. We were not ready with all those stretch goals. We're not ready for with the content, with the updates, and we were not ready to and we didn't know anything, so we didn't know what it would take to answer all the comments and interact with the community and basically make the campaign alive. That's because that's what people like.
Yeah.
Really we created all those kind of challenges and quests and something like that to make it entertaining and I think it was just all improvised, on the go, because we had no idea what we were going to really.
On the same side, then I would have imagined that when you were doing kind of the video creation and things like that, you've already given examples where you've used I've used plastic tubes in order to create a kind of a steady motion kind of thing. So it sounds to me there was a lot of thinking on your feet. And I'm getting the impression that if I put you in a situation where you've got to think in your feet, realising you've got a job next day where you've got to be a web designer, that you sound like you kind of flourish under that kind of pressure. And it sounds like Kickstarter was something that was a stressful environment, but it was something that you thrived under, that you enjoyed. I mean, a lot of people find Kickstarter an extremely stressful experience and only do it because it's the way to get their game funded. Where it sounds to me like you were this is, I'm actually enjoying this process as well as just trying to get funding.
Well, it's definitely that type of thing where you're I love that thing of being under the fire, and I love being under pressure. I love to work under stressful conditions. It's a bit weird to say it, honestly, but it's that's how I strive, I suppose. And to say it's enjoyable, it is, because there's that satisfaction that it's working, right? You're not doing all of those things for nothing. You're doing it to answer the community and the positive feedback. So it was all in good fun. Coming up with all those challenges and ideas for involving the community was really okay, that was fun. That was a lot of work, but that was fun, because you could see that people were following. But I also do remember crashing really hard at the end of that campaign, being completely exhausting, and it was full on. We were just two people and at that time, and then it was a lot of people, and we had so many comments, and we were following up on all of those, and it was quite insane. But it was a bit unreal as well. When the campaign ended, we reached those 170 or something. I just remember kind of almost pinching myself. Is that did it just happen? Is it true?
Exactly.
Is that something
exactly?
It's really something. And then it seems like it's the hardest part of the project, but definitely not. The logistic, the production, the logistic is the hardest part after that. Kickstarter is the easiest thing actually if you look on the big scale of things.
I think it depends on the type of person you are. I think it goes back to that what I was saying earlier on about people being kind of mathematical type creatures and people being creative type creatures. I think there's some people that if they're mathematical type creatures, I could ask them to show me the spreadsheet where they've worked out all their logistical costs for every single country that has a backer in it, and that they've already got quotes for XYZ, and they've worked out their economies for scale depending on the number of copies they get printed. But when it comes to them, they're the type of person that would email me and go, I'm not sure about coming on the podcast in case I'm, I might freeze up or I might not be entertaining or I'm really, really worried. And they struggle with the marketing side of things of Kickstarter. They struggle with the reactivity of Kickstarter. The game design is absolutely excellent, but it's that kind of creative and marketing thing that they kind of struggle with. At the same time, as I say, there are people who they do amazing jobs in the Kickstarter, and then when it comes to the business head of it, they struggle with that. They struggle with kind of like dealing with that kind of thing. But again, did you then allocate each other because you're working as a duo, as a team? Did you allocate then jobs to make sure that everything kind of ran as smoothly as it possibly could?
I suppose we took shift, let's say, for some of the thing for talking to the community and stuff like that. When it comes to the production, the logistic and things like that, it's more like I have that thing also with, I like when things are organized. I have my system and I drive people crazy with my system. I know that. And that makes it really hard for someone to help me in a way, because it's not like they don't want to, it's that it's almost like somehow I'm not allowing them to.
Yeah, no,
because,
I get that. I get that. I mean, it's, I'm having to deal with, having a regular co-host with Luke kind of in that, and I've always had a process and a way of doing things, and it's inviting somebody else into that space and saying, right, do you want to get involved in this? And saying, but you do it this way, and it's like, okay, but yeah, it's that kind of system, the way that you kind of do things, and it kind of, it's almost like a little bit of protection. It's a little bubble. I'm in control when I know what's happening here. If I let anybody in, then all of a sudden things aren't 100% in my control, and I'm not sure about that,
But that's terrible, because like I've had the same problem many times, like especially like with the last fulfillment for like the latest game, Fractal. I have a lot of people around me that wants to help me, but every time I'm like, you know what, I cannot really. I don't think you can help me, because it will take me longer to explain how I do things than to do the thing myself. In a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you do it a little bit different, I don't want to create a situation where I get mad at you because you want to help, but because I'm so like peculiar with my system and all those things, so I end up like piling up things for myself rather than to like accepting people to help me. That's a personal issue on many things in my life, but so yeah, for those roles, I suppose we had our roles, and we try to kind of like dispatch different things on our shoulders, but all the organization, logistic and stuff like that was more like something that I was taking charge. Okay. But it's always nice to have someone though to, sometimes you need just a reassurance to know like, okay, I'm doing that, do you think it makes sense, like kind of like having someone telling you like, yeah, okay, have you thought about that, have you thought, like having that person where you can like debate if you're doing things properly, because everything was new. Like I had no idea how to produce a game. I had no idea how to like import a game and deliver a game to, like, we had more than 3,500 backers. So it's a whole new world. It's a complex world. I know now a lot of terms for import and stuff like that I didn't want to know. Like all those complex things with logistics it's not something that I've ever been interested in, and I know why now.
So, obviously, not content with giving yourself a big enough job with Exodus, you then decide to go to Kickstarter again with Fractal. So,
Right, yeah.
and as a musician, you'll be aware of this. What they call the difficult second album. So in terms of the design for Fractal, did that come from pieces that were left out of Exodus, or was that a completely separate design that you had kind of sitting?
So that's a completely different experience for Fractal, because Fractal is a game that we have been contacted with by Bernardo, which is the game designer of Fractal, the original game designer. And he came up with that concept that was quite mature already, and that big ideas. And then he had seen Exodus, he had backed Exodus, and he loved the just aesthetic of Exodus. And like thought that he would be a good match with Fractal. And yeah, we definitely agreed on that. And that's how Fractal was born. So like we had less involvement in Fractal in the game design than Exodus, for sure.
Okay. Was it a different prospect then when you went to Kickstarter? Because obviously you had some experience, you knew how to deal with kind of like the client, the kind of the, I guess, the backers. But you then went on. I mean, was it almost like 500,000? So was that again? I mean, was you kind of like, oh, this is just like a huge surprise? I mean, did you go in expecting, well, if we get another 170,000, I know how to deal with that? But then it went on to do almost like 500,000. Are you just like, at any point were you just like running around with your hands in the air going, I have no idea what I'm doing, this is rubbish?
Well, we honestly, like, we had that goal to do better than the first game. Yeah. Because that's the way we are. We want to try to make better than the previous game, but the project was completely different. It was a much bigger project, like much more components. The production was different. Like we also like started to like had add-ons and more like more things to it, more like different components and different production quality and things like that as well. So it was expected that he would do a little bit better with less backer, because the price tag was like for the game itself was actually like more than double than the price of Exodus. But not that much as 500,000, no, for sure. You pressed the launch on the Kickstarter, and like you went like crazy for like, I think in less than a day we had 100,000 euros, which is like it's insane. You see those counter going, and I've seen that on many campaigns. When you follow the launch of like big campaign, and then you see the counter going up and up and up and up. Yeah. And like I saw that for a bit slower, but still I saw that for my own campaign. It was kind of like unrealistic. And yeah, so in a way, I want to say we were not prepared as well, not as much as we should have been.
So you had, I mean, were you then under pressure to kind of do kind of stretch goals and expansions and kind of quality of life kind of changes as well? Because I noticed that you had like the campaign, but then you had the add-ons, you had things like metal tokens, card sleeves and things like that. Were they something that was planned from the beginning, or was that something that was kind of like community driven? Because the reason I'm asking this is because sometimes I'll find that sometimes additional stretch goals and add-ons will come from the community as opposed to being something that was there at the very, very big kind of beginning.
Yeah, so some of it was planned, like the metal token, for example, and the sieve of plan. But when we actually launched the campaign, we had this idea of having the core game and the expansion as a different box. And that was always the plan, because I also think about the logistic of it, like how easy it is to kind of like produce things, and like not even to produce, but to find my way around, like how many units I have and stuff like that. And a lot of people actually they just put out there the idea of having like a collector box of like where there would be like everything in one box. And that's something that we had to improvise on the go, because like it was essentially, it was a good idea. For some reason we didn't think about it, but it was a good idea, and that's what we did at the end. So, but I think that's the only thing. We've probably upgraded some components and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm in general not a big fan of stretch goal, in the sense that I think it's kind of fake in a way.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah.
And so we had those community goal where we told people there will be something, like we're just gonna, like, it's not just conditioned to the price, because we had this idea that we wanted the game to be that way, and it was not because there was suddenly like 500 backers less than what it should have been, that we would not do it again the way that we had in our mind. So, but it was actually quite misunderstood, this idea of not having stretch goal. And I remember when we launched, a lot of people were worried that why don't they have stretch goal? Like, why don't they have like an extra character hidden somewhere? That's if we reach this amount.
I think once you get to a certain level of funding, it's almost like it's expected. I think that there's a lot of games out there that, through no fault of their own, end up doing extremely well, and then people are like, well, where are the stretch goals? And it's like, well, to be honest, we didn't put them in because we have everything that you want. But I do know for a while that with people like Simon and companies like that, it was all about the stretch goals. It was all about pushing people to spend more and more money, which basically unlocked it. It was almost like, the best way I would describe it, it was almost like they had baked the whole cake, but then what they did is they removed like 8 slices of the cake and put it to one side, and then said,
that's what stretch goal is.
And then basically it was already there, it was already developed. But I think there was a point where kind of stretch goals kind of reached a saturation, and people were just like, no, we're not wanting to do this anymore. I think we're starting to see kind of companies come on to crowdfunding where they just say, look, there isn't any stretch goals. What it means is that if you back us, we get the game made. If lots of you back us, we get lots and lots more of the game made, and we can actually put it into distribution. And if we put it into distribution, it means that another company might pick it up, which means that we can reprint games and we can look at expansions when expansions are ready to be created, as opposed to expansions and additions just for the sake of kind of having them. They can be much more kind of well thought out, if that makes kind of sense.
Yeah, I also, when we did the campaign, we prepared the campaign, we also had that kind of very transparent and honest thing of like, we're not gonna make you believe that there is only 6 factions in Fractal, and suddenly like, because the game reached 200k, then suddenly there's a 7-1 that we just baked overnight. It's also like, I don't think it's honest, and I don't think it's very fair also for the game designer, which has spent a lot of time to try to balance the game and make sure everything works together.
Yes.
So if suddenly like it's conditioned to a certain amount of money that you receive, like it's not worth the sacrifices of like
No.
this or this component just to like because components are just, it's cardboard at this point. We're talking about a few extra cards,
Yeah.
few more mats. It doesn't cost that much more. So like we really went there with like trying to be transparent and honest and say like we had that vision for the game. This is how we want it. And the thing that we kind of like say is like the thing that we could improve, like for example this illustration, we could have more diverse illustrations. We could like more unique illustration, like for example for some of the components they will all have their unique illustration instead of one generic one. That was a stretch goal for us. That's what we and that's also what we wanted. But I think it was a little bit misunderstood, and that people didn't really understand why there was not like suddenly a new faction appearing on the 10th days of the campaign, and but I like that honest approach. Still, I still stand by that choice, because there's no need to lie to people and pretend that something is like you say, if the cake is baked, why would you remove a quarter just to pretend it wasn't there? It's not a gift.
Yeah. And as I say, I think there's a risk for if you don't reach kind of certain funding goals, then not all the stretch goals get unlocked, which means it's like, well, you're missing this kind of expansion off here, therefore that does kind of unbalance the kind of the game, so you end up with a slightly inferior kind of product. With Fractal going out to kind of backers just now, do you have another? I mean, what's next? What's next for kind of Board Game Inc? I mean, I take it you must already have a kind of a plan for what's kind of going to happen next.
Yeah, we do. So we have actually 2 games in the pipelines. The first one is so when we made the first game Exodus, obviously we did it with a few like concessions in terms of like, because we did not know what we were doing. Let's be honest. And you know, I made Exodus, and it's a very nice game. I really love it still now. And the thing that I see as a creative person is like, I see, that could have been a little bit better. We could have made this better, or more improve that component, or like. So basically, all to say that we are doing a reprint plus. It's kind of a 1.5 edition of Exodus.
Okay.
It's Exodus in terms of component is as I wish I could have made it the first time. Yeah. With the knowledge that I also acquired since. There's plenty of things that I didn't know back then. I've discovered like many ways to make components, what's possible, what's not, and so I kind of want to go there again, and like, because also like we have a lot of people from Fractal that are also like interested in Exodus, and so it comes with streamlined gameplay. We also we learned and we heard also what people said about it. So we're streamlining, we're improving, we're changing a little bit when we have to, and then trying to make it better, basically a better version of the first Exodus. Really, that's what we're trying to do. And we have a second game from Skippy that you had in your podcast some times ago.
Oh, not him.
This guy.
I prefer him over his brother, basically, to be perfectly. William, you'll be listening to this, and I absolutely meant that 100%. Come and fight me in the Kmart parking lot. I'll be waiting. But yeah, because it was it Lunar Rush, I think, that Skippy did previously, if I remember. So what are you doing with him next then?
So he came recommended by Will, and I didn't know he was his brother at the time. And he said like, there's that game designer, like he has a really good concept, and I was like, sure, I'm curious by nature, like a meeting will only take an hour or two, so it doesn't matter, like I'm curious to hear, and Skippy just like came up with that concept, and it's a really good game. Like I really love the mechanic that he had in playing that one, I immediately see like okay, so when he shows me his prototypes, it's it's just like blank cards with a little bit of text there and there. So it's kind of like it's hard for me to see, like, to understand things if I don't have a visual on it.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And but I still, even with that, I really liked the idea that he had, and I also saw like the potential to create, like, I loved, like, in a game I like when there's a story around it. I like when you immerse people into like your universe and try to create a story out of something. And I saw that right away, and I think it's a really great potential for that game. So we decided to start working together on that game. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So yeah, it's really something that I'm looking forward to. I love like creating the design, the graphic design of the game is actually my favorite part of it. So right now I'm like doing the changes on Exodus, and I'm working on that new one, and like I love that part very much because I'm just in my cavern, in my zone all the time, and like this is the creative part that I like.
Yeah. So are you still working on a full-time basis then? Do you still have a job, or are you slowly kind of moving away from a 9 to 5 and becoming kind of like, I suppose you've been your own boss before, so this will just be like putting comfortable shoes back on.
The interesting thing is, like, before we launched Exodus, I was working in Norway at that time, and I actually quit my job like 3 months before launching the campaign, because in my head it was like, if you gotta try, you might as well go all in, and if it succeeds, awesome. If it doesn't, well, I just find another job. Like, I mean, I'm a graphic designer. Like, there's 10 new ads a day for that job. You'll find something. So yeah, I quit the job, and I launched into this, and I focused a lot the months after the campaign on making Exodus. I'm still working as a freelance, as a graphic designer.
Oh, right, okay.
For companies also back in Norway. I'm not employed as such, but I do have that little like security backup, just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Which feels good. Feels good to have something just in case.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
If people have listened along and they want to keep an eye on what you're up to and where you are, where can they find out about yourself on the internet webs? Where do you exist?
If they have managed to follow along, thank you. We have our website, boardgaming.com. So bored as in like I'm bored.
Yes.
Gaming. It's not something that everybody understand, especially in France. Like it's the same. Like when I'm the company is registered in Belgium actually, because like that's where my friend was based.
Yeah.
And when you have to talk to administration and they ask you for the name of the company and you say Board Game Inc., they just don't grasp it because well, I mean, I can't blame them. It's a bit of a weird name, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, the website, and we have a newsletter there, which we don't really use, to be honest, but we should.
So go to the website. Don't bother with the newsletter because you'll never actually get anything sent to you through the... In fact, if you want to sign up to a newsletter where you don't get bothered every single week by a newsletter...
You're not going to be bothered by ours, for sure.
Then go to Board Game Inc. and sign up for the newsletter, and you're guaranteed that you'll be like, you'll never get lots and lots of emails from them. You'll be very, very happy indeed. It's
like as a private person, I don't like when I subscribe to a newsletter and I'm bothered every day because I feel like, okay, that's too much. I just want to unsubscribe to that.
Yeah.
So I want to keep that excitement of okay, there's something new, and then when there is something, then at least you know that it's something important.
And people will read it.
So yeah. Cool. So maybe one day we'll do one newsletter.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe. But not today. But what we will do is we'll make sure that we put all the links into the show notes so that we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then go to the internet and search for We're Not Wizards. If you want to catch up on previous podcast episodes, go to we'renotwizards.com. If you want to read words that we've written in the form of reviews and other such things, and also the latest podcasts get posted there as well, go to we'renotwizards.co.uk. Again, if you like what you've listened to, then please go and subscribe on your podcast catcher of choice. But Spotify is apparently all lovely and wonderful, so go and check us out on Spotify and give us a little subscription on there, and give us a rating or a review as well. There are only a couple more things left to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Yann?
We're definitely not wizards.
That's easy.
No.
Just need to get everybody else to do exactly the same thing as well. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the rather wonderful, rather fantastic Yann Hilaire. Say goodbye, Hilaire.
Still nailed it. Perfect.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. But until the next time, take a look beyond the void, the fractal way, and bye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.